Welcome, everyone, to this amazing afternoon, I hope. Amazing for me, I hope amazing for you as the afternoon unfolds. It's a great privilege to welcome you to this first public presentation of results of the first 2 years and a half of the existence of the Max Planck Harvard Research Center for the Archaeoscience of the Ancient Mediterranean, a name invented by a committee, in case you didn't guess. Pronounced by the good people as MHAAM and by the bad people, that is Mike, as MHAAM. You have a sheet which outlines, lists 24 major publications that our research group have produced in the last 2 years and a half. And as we were looking at it this morning, we realized we left some things out. But anyhow, it gives you an idea of the tremendous productivity that happens when you bring together two extraordinary institutions like Harvard University and the Max Planck Society in the personification of the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History. To open our proceedings, I have the great privilege and pleasure of welcoming my friend, Mark Elliott, who's the Vice Provost of International Affairs of Harvard University and who was designated by Harvard as the official interlocutor with President Stratmann of the Max Planck Society in October 2017 when we had our formal inauguration. Mark, please welcome Mark Elliott, Professor Mark Elliott. Thank you.
So I want to offer a warm welcome on behalf of the university to everybody here, and greetings especially to those of you who have traveled long distances to join us. We've done our best to provide you with a perfect New England afternoon. I just regret to say that you're not going to get to see much of it because you're going to be in this room, and I'll be here for just a little part of that afternoon, but some terrific presentations today at the Symposium from Homer to History. I'm very grateful to Michael for giving me the chance to say a few words, and they will be just a few words. I also appreciate very much the guidance on how to pronounce the acronym MH or MPHRCAAM or MHAAM. Having spent a little bit of time in Denmark, I was just going to call it MHAAM, since we know that in Danish, most of the middle of the word is never pronounced anyway. But I think MHAAM is even better. And this collaboration is creating a good kind of mayhem, I think, in bringing together historians, archaeologists, geneticists, and specialists from a wide range of areas to probe in figurative as well as in literal ways the past for clues about how things got to be the way they are. As many of you know, the Max Planck Harvard Research Center for the Archaeoscience of the Ancient Mediterranean is a joint venture. This is not a word that is used a lot at Harvard. We reserve it for very special kinds of collaborations, of which this is one particular and I think really encouraging example. A joint venture of the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in collaboration with the Initiative for the Science of the Human Past here at Harvard with the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, with generous support from the Institute for Aegean Prehistory and the Gillette-Berkowitz Fund. I regret to say that our friend Malcolm Weiner will not be able to join us today, but we all know, I think, the very important role that Mr. Weiner has played throughout in the support of this kind of research, and most particularly in the creation of this center. So Max Planck and Harvard both share, of course, a common interest in human mobility in the past, in cultural encounters, in the movement of genes, objects, languages, practices, ideas, particularly in the early history of the Mediterranean, which is, of course, the focus of this project, but not only that area. When we signed this agreement a couple of years ago, we had good confidence that this was good, this was going to work. The idea was to promote, to build on existing relationships that had been formed between my colleague Mike McCormick and David Reich in the medical school, together with their colleagues Johannes Krauss and Philip Stockhammer, and welcome Philip back to Harvard, of the Max Planck Institute in Jena and in Munich. The idea here was to establish a framework for a more systematic, long-term collaboration between our respective institutes and centers and universities, and to do so in a way that we don't see so often in social sciences and humanities. There's a lot of course, collaboration that happens at the university, and I get to know about a fair amount of it. I don't pretend to know all the collaborations that go on because there are just too many of them, but we do pay particular attention to international collaborations. And for the most part, these collaborations happen in the sciences. They happen in STEM fields, and to a much less robust degree in humanities and social sciences. An exception I'll point to my colleague Peter Bohl here, who's been key in building relationships and collaborations in digital social sciences and digital humanities with colleagues, particularly in China. But Mike is another example of somebody who has done more than his share to burst the typical stereotype of the historian sitting alone in glorious isolation in his or her study, surrounded by piles of documents and talking to no one except the ghosts of the past for months and months on end, and then gradually losing the ability to communicate with actual living people. And Michael has shown that there are other ways of doing history and really exciting ways of doing history that are truly interdisciplinary in ways that we don't often see. We talk a lot about interdisciplinarity, and many times interdisciplinarity means talking to somebody in the anthropology department. We've gone well beyond that in the work that is happening here with this collaboration. As Michael mentioned just a minute ago, we have 24, actually more than 24, publications that have resulted from this collaboration since it was formalized, which is a demonstration of what a good idea it was to put this center together, to put this agreement in place, and how productive it is to bring groups like this together in one place to share research results, new ideas, to challenge each other, to think outside of our own disciplinary boundaries, and to remind us of the benefits and the insights that we get when we do that. And you just look at the schedule for this afternoon, you will see what I'm talking about. I spent a little bit of time this morning actually looking at one of the articles. Michael sent us this list. I found one of particular interest to me, the formation of human populations in South and Central Asia, that appeared in Science just a month or so ago. It's not often that agreements that I sign end up benefiting me in any way in a scholarly or academic fashion. I'm a historian of China, and particularly with an interest on China and its interactions with its nomadic neighbors to the north and the west, and how populations moved in that area, how languages moved, how the Turks got from the Orkhon Valley all the way to Anatolia, and the population admixtures. This is obviously a later period than the period that's discussed here. But I read this with a lot of interest and no little satisfaction to think that I had a tiny little part in helping to make some of this go. And if I ever am actually able to understand the genetic part of it, I will be very, very pleased and even more proud of myself. Let me conclude here. Before we move into the agenda for today, I want to acknowledge with gratitude on behalf of the university and in particular the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. The commitment that MHAAM or MHAAM has made for 3 doctoral fellowships within the departments of anthropology and archaeology, human evolutionary biology, and history. These matter a lot to the university. With this kind of funding, we are able to remain confident in the ability to grow these various fields and to know that Harvard will continue to contribute scholarship in humanities, social sciences, and life sciences in ways that combine all of these in a very innovative way, particularly at a time when funding for fellowships is in such dire need. The generosity here of the center has been extremely valuable. So again, congratulations on reaching a terrific milestone. These are early days still, but so promising and really very exciting. I'm just really pleased that we thought this was going to be a great thing, and it has. It really has. So again, thanks to everybody. Welcome again, and best wishes for a terrific afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much, Mark, for that wonderful introduction. It was very beautiful. It is really a pleasure to see one trying to do something institutionally and to see it work. And the proof really is in the pudding, as you've seen from those remarkable publications. And as you will hear now as we go forward. As you heard, our dear friend Malcolm Weiner is indisposed. We hope to see him a little bit later in the day, but he will not be joining us at the very beginning in any event. So the Max Planck Harvard Research Center is an agreement, a collaboration between the Max Planck Society and the personification of the Max Planck Institute in Jena for the Science of Human History, and the Initiative for the Science of the Human Past at Harvard, which brings together colleagues and research groups, seminars, and laboratories all across Harvard University in virtually every one of our divisions. We began on in October 2017 formally with the inauguration, the signing ceremony between Professor Elliott and the president of the Max Planck Society. And we've tried to build a virtual transatlantic bridge between Cambridge, Mass. and Jena. That's a challenge, but perhaps not quite the challenge of trying to reach across the river to the medical school here on occasion. And it's been a tremendous amount of fun. We really want to create a virtual link between Jena and Cambridge, but we also want to create a real human link, because our experience has taught us that Zoom and Skype and internet and telephone and so forth works great for communicating. It works really well for communicating if you actually know each other in the flesh and if you have a background of speaking to one another. And so these moments in which we come together not in virtual fashion but in actual biological fashion, as it were, are really fundamental. All our conversations are embedded in this familiarity one with the other, and not just the professors, not just the postdocs, not just the senior graduate students, but the beginning graduate students, and indeed the undergraduates. We had our first undergraduate at Jena last December. So these personal connections, these working side by side and learning from each other in very practical terms, are really laying the foundation for a new kind of thinking, a new kind of scholarship, a new kind of investigator and human being. This is our cast of characters, the 4 principals, the directors, on both sides of the equation, and the first 4 graduate students at Harvard to be supported by the project, 3 of them fully funded from beginning and through to the completion of their studies, which of course lies in the future, but not far in the future, we hope. And Aideen Harney, who received additional support for the work that she was doing in this context. So we've been able to spread this wonderful generosity across 4 different departments of the university, and it makes a big difference in a time of very severely restricted graduate programs. So it's been a time of really a cascade of scientific discoveries. You have a summation of 24 of the most important papers that we've published in the last 3 years, 2.5 years. And what has been happening is that these investigations have turned up a lot of new data, a lot of completely new evidence. It's not a question of circling the wagons around the 3 same passages of Herodotus that we've been circling the wagons around for the last 2,000 years. Now we have all this new incredible data, which is extremely challenging to understand, extremely destabilizing to the conventional wisdoms that we've had and built up over the years through painstaking, high-quality archaeological and historical investigations. There's so much new material coming, and it's ranging from ancient DNA to ancient oral microbiomes, right across the spectrum of the archaeobiological evidence of the human and the non-human past. I've already mentioned the publications. You can take a look at them. They're pretty amazing. As I say, we were surprised ourselves. And this cascade of new discoveries has been focused on the ancient world most broadly construed from the time of Paleolithic up until the Middle Ages. And it's been focused on the Mediterranean, but its hinterlands in the vastest possible sense. You just heard Professor Elliott say that, wow, this was really interesting to my work on China and Central Asia. So we are reaching out very, very far. Within the Mediterranean, and that's where we're going to spend most of our focus today, we're going to be talking about the Western Mediterranean, about Iberia, the Western Islands, Sicily, perhaps a little bit of North Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean, the world of the Aegean, the Levant, the Fertile Crescent, and more. And to help prepare us for that, my co-director and friend, Philip Stockhammer, is going to say a few words on the next few slides.
Yeah. Mike already showed the regions, how we understand MHAAM, I call it MHAAM, where we are working. And I just want to zoom a little bit deeper with you into the Eastern Mediterranean to make clear where we're actually working. You see here the different, the area, and if we zoom in, you see this is at least on the Jena side, the sites where we have samples where we are working on in the Eastern Mediterranean. Of course, through time, but you can see that this map is basically built up by many, many sites where we are trying to have such a deeper understanding by integrating archaeological dash historical questions with the different now possible bioarchaeological methods, of course, with a focus on genetic analysis. And the selection of these sites, I mean, it's not taking sites in order to have a site, it's question-based research that is at the basic idea of what MHAAM is. And this question-oriented research was defined in the beginning as having 3 different areas of focus. So our first focus was mobility and migration in the Mediterranean in the 2nd millennium BCE. So the period of time where we see for the first time something like a global community emerging with trade routes spanning all over, of course, culminating in the Eastern Mediterranean, but connecting even far like East and South Asia. And in the end, we saw that it's important to really embed the Eastern and the Mediterranean in a larger picture in order to understand this region. Our second focus, as we originally defined it, was Phoenician and so-called Phoenician and Greek migration in the 1st millennium. This has been a focus, this is a focus that has been emerging now in the last years with research, for example, done by Alisa Mitnick that she will present this afternoon, something where we know from historical sources there are something like migrations that are very difficult to grasp if you have a look at the individual. You know, we don't know, was this individual mobile or not? And now by integrating these different kinds of research, we're able to really write individual histories. And the third focus is mobility and pandemics in antiquity, or let's say through all times in the past, something where we had a wonderful and very inspiring workshop already this morning, where we tried to go beyond current state of research that's very often based only on literary sources by bringing it together, rereading literary text. On the other hand, bringing in bioarchaeology, having a new, fresh look at the archaeological material in order to write really new, groundbreaking stories. And this, especially our research on pandemics, has really brought one of the most inspiring publications that Mike has already mentioned before. However, our topic today for this afternoon is very much, as we call it, from Homer to history, is very much the Aegean, and I would call it the broader Aegean, because there will also be papers like on Anatolia or people that possibly traveled from the Aegean to other places. So nevertheless, it will be a focus on a region that is at the very heart of MHAAM, a region which witnessed in the second millennium, the emergence of a complex society. All of you probably know the palaces of Knossos or the palace of Mycenae that have been fascinating us for more than 100 years now. And where on the other hand, it's very difficult to write a history of those people beyond focusing on elites, And our kind of research, by understanding individual mobilities, really helps us to write individual life stories, to understand mobility on an individual scale, and to go beyond these kind of very general narratives. And I think the research in the afternoon will show completely new insights into social inequality, individual mobility, economic systems that can only emerge from integrating these different strands of research that we apply in MHAAM. And this is where Mike
take over the baton. Thank you, Philip. So we've got an exciting mix of discoveries to present to you this afternoon. Some of them are advanced and mature investigations that are about to be published or have just been published by individuals such as these. But this is great. This is the kind of the known stuff for the people who are following every single publication the minute it appears. But we also have something that's even more exciting, but therefore more delicate, and that's our preliminary presentations in which our younger investigators are at the very beginning of studying something, and they want to workshop with this very smart and diverse group some of the questions and some of the problems they have. And of course, those presentations are off the record and embargoed. Not so much because they're afraid, but because they're at the start, and they don't want to foreclose the conclusions that they may come to. That will include works by our own Megan Michael in our graduate program at MHAAM, and Irini as well. So with no further ado, let me introduce the first session as chair, our distinguished colleague at the director of the Joukowsky Institute of Archaeology at Brown University, Peter van Dommelen, and who will be trying to keep David Reich and Alyssa Mitnick under control. Welcome, welcome, welcome.